I'm Dean Deal.
And I'm Steve Hoskins.
And you're listening to This Is the Good Life, a podcast devoted to deciphering what it means to live as a Christian in this day and age.
And not just a Christian, but as philosophers, theologians, and maybe even decent golfers.
And a marketing guy.
Yeah, used to be a marketing guy.
Yeah, so speak for yourself. As two longtime college professors, we share a common goal to bring virtue and character back into the conversation of what it means to be Christian.
We'll do this by unpacking the thoughts of both our current culture and prominent philosophers like Aristotle, Kant, Descartes, and a guy called Jesus Christ.
You'll find that some pretty old thinkers had some pretty good ideas.
So join us for a conversation worth having about a life worth living.
After all, this is the good life. There it is, Matt.
Hello.
We are joined.
Matthew, you're here.
We don't even have to tell you we're
Shocking.
on camera. You can actually see that
I
we have a
actually
guest.
showed up.
Did you kind of like apparate like this is like
I
Harry
did.
Potter?
Right. Just walked out of a hallway.
There
And
it
you
is.
apparate
See?
and you disapparate, which looks a lot like apparating. I can't tell what the dis adds to it.
Me either, but what do we know? We haven't sold millions of
No,
books.
we haven't. And so we are joined by the Right Reverend Dr.
Okay.
Matthew Hastings.
What's your
Hello.
middle name?
Bryant.
Oh, that would have been
sounds
better.
even better.
That makes you sound like a
Matthew
lawyer.
Bryant. Yeah.
If you
Yeah.
could get a lawyer, we could add Esquire to
Yeah.
the end of that.
Anyone that you know, a lot of the kids that are naming their, I'm like, you got like a crew team. You know, it's like a British
yeah.
crew team. You know,
Yes.
is Connor and Hunter and
Landon.
Land. Yes,
Yeah,
all
yeah.
of these.
Oh, those
all
are
of
good
them.
ones. Those are good. So we're here. This particular episode is the last episode of our fourth season.
This is the end of
This
season
is the end
4.
of the season, and it's going to release right before Easter.
Okay.
And so we thought it would be good to save for the last practice. The
It's
practice.
the week after the Masters, actually. You've missed it. If you're a Southerner,
Right.
you keep time by the Masters.
Well, we're gonna talk
Someone
about
said to me
time.
the other day, you know, we've had weird weather here in Nashville. I don't know if you've noticed. I mean, with your head and everything. And, you know, anyway, yesterday it was 38. Today it's 68. And somebody said, how do you handle it in Nashville? And when do you plant? And I said, hey, we keep time by the Masters. You don't plant. You don't count spring chickens, right? Until after the Masters.
Well, and it's ironic that you would bring that up because this is what we're talking about in this final episode of our season is the practice of time.
Yeah.
And as we pass through time, and Easter's one of the biggies. We have Christmas and Easter. Everybody jumps on with Christmas and Easter, but this alignment of our lives around time goes deeper than that. And anytime you start talking about people, like, that sounds rigid. I'm like, oh, you're already doing it.
Right.
We're already doing it. There's a Hallmark calendar and a Target. You can tell when you walk in the store. It's like they're putting away Valentine's and they're setting up St. Patrick's.
Oh, at the Crack Bar last year. So the Cracker Barrel. My wife calls it the Crack Bar.
I think it's probably good to
Good
say
disclaimer
the
on
Cracker
that.
Barrel.
Make that
probably
clear.
should.
Then
Anyway,
the Crack Bar.
Anyway,
Half of our listeners just ran out.
Or tuned in a little bit, turned it up.
We
a
just
little
got a
bit.
whole new
Yeah. Hey.
target
With
audience.
the Crack Bar.
But anyway, I went to the Cracker Barrel on August 1st, okay? And it's Christmas.
Yeah.
There's no.
Yeah.
It's not just like a section in the Cracker Barrel.
It's full blown.
It's full blown.
Yeah.
And the Oak Ridge boys are singing Santa Claus is coming to town.
Well, that
and
talking about speaking of marking time from the South.
yeah, there it
Yes.
is. I mean, and I'm thinking how weird. But I think you're right. I mean, I think certain things in the way this culture moves. You don't want to say makes progress because it's hard to think of this culture as being progressive anymore.
Yeah, we already talked. I'm not going through.
We're not going through
You push
that
that
again.
button on
ever
me and you're
again.
going to get 30 minutes of stuff on progress.
And
You don't-
no.
You don't want to pull that
But
string.
you know, I think you're right. We kind of collapse time into Christmas and Easter.
Yeah.
We even write
Church time. We go church time.
And we even write books. We have church consultants that talk to us about those Christmas and Easter crowd folks. You know, how to target them, how to minister to them. It's very fascinating to me.
And how to count your attendance.
Yeah, and how to count your attendance.
You counted at Christmas
Yeah,
or Easter.
yeah,
yeah,
In fact, if I get everybody to come like they do on Easter, we'd be all right.
yeah.
Yeah, that would be the numbers. And yet there is this aligning of our lives around a time that is not just Christian. It's something we inherited from the Jewish people as well, where they seriously
Yeah.
aligned their lives around a calendar of time
Yeah.
with the set festivals and the periods of time.
And we're subject to cultural forces that have taken over time.
no doubt.
Hallmark is now sets the liturgical calendar
That's
in
right.
many evangelical churches. I was not aware of this until I became pastor. And I became pastor, I was in seminary. This is 1989. And my very first Sunday was Mother's Day. And it was also John and Charles Wesley Sunday in the Anglican church calendar. I
And
had
which
this-
did you choose?
And I chose, and then I got there and realized we had a full Mother's Day. This is a church of 8 people
Oh, yeah.
in a town of 900 that is so far up into the corner of Missouri, it's practically in Nebraska. The only reason that it's there is there's a huge grain shovel and these silos just filled with corn and grain and all this stuff. And there's 900 people or so in there, and 5 churches, and we were one. And I got up and I'm going, welcome to church. We're here to celebrate our faith. And somebody goes, and all the mothers.
and all the mothers.
And then they said, would all the mothers stand up? And so
I'm guessing it was 4 of the 8.
it was 4 of the 8. Well, it was actually a 5th person stood up. We had this older gentleman named Corbin. And when he came to church, he turned his hearing aids off.
So he couldn't
hear a
just
thing.
thought
But he
everybody-
looked around and saw everybody standing.
Yeah.
So he stood up.
or at least most of them. Yeah, right.
It was fabulous.
Well,
just-
speaking of that, I think moving into the first lead assignment that I had, I had to make a decision.
Wait, you've had elite assignments?
Being a pastor in the Church of the Nazarene, buddy.
Wow. Good to
I
know.
have
No
been-
higher calling.
No, yeah.
No higher calling.
But in a similar way, you just do what you've been taught,
Yeah.
and you come in and say, hey, we're going to walk through this. And it wasn't necessarily pushback per se. It was more, they just didn't.
Well, in this little church, it was already, think about this. I mean, we are 30 miles from a city of any size, St. Joe, Missouri. And this is 1989. It was already ingrained in them.
Yes.
Mother's Day was part of the liturgical calendar.
Yeah. I grew up every Mother's Day hearing a sermon about what is a good mother.
Yeah.
And then you get to Father's Day and what is a good father. And
Yeah.
then you get to Valentine's Day, we talk about love, and you go through
That's right.
these things.
And Grandparents'
And so
Day.
aligning our lives around time is something that we do without even thinking about it. And yet then we have the church calendar.
Yeah.
And you start talking about the church calendar, it's like, well, now wait a minute, that starts to sound liturgical.
Well, but when you
Yes,
when you,
it does.
Well, and when you
and that's-
reference
you're saying that like that's
well,
bad.
and when you reference, the Jewish understanding of time, one of the things that makes its way early on into Christianity is this sense of the importance not just of time, but of a week of time, a unit of time,
Yes.
and the importance of Sunday.
Yes.
If you go across languages,
Sabbath,
but also it's the sense of it is the day that belongs to God.
Yes.
It's the day that literally sanctifies the other days of the week.
Yeah,
And
sanctified time
is really
and
it.
redeemed time.
And if you go like to in Spanish, Sunday is, I think it's Dominico or Domingo. I think it's Domingo. And you hear these ways of talking about the way that, this belongs to God. This is something that God has chosen, and this is the way that God orders life. And then you get to the Christian understanding of time. And it's not 7 days, it's an octave. And resurrection is the 8th day of the week. It's the day of the new creation. And so when you get to Easter in the early church, okay, Easter, is the great celebration, right? It's the celebration of resurrection. But Easter within very few decades probably 200 or so, it becomes an octave, an 8-day celebration. And then it becomes, right, the 50 days until you get to Pentecost. Yeah. And then immediately upon Pentecost, Resurrection, Trinity Sunday, Resurrection Sunday. And it all of a sudden, Easter becomes the normative way that Christians understand their lives. And resurrection, we were dead in our sins and our trespasses. But now, in this time, we are alive to God.
It's certainly I would say that's the hope. I don't know. I wonder if it is normative. I wish it were, but I'm not sure that it is. You know, you might dip your toe into, out of time and into consumerist, but but thinking about all of the things that are placed before us, at least in the early years, asking questions, particularly of those who had been around in that context for a while, because I wanted to walk with them.
Right.
I didn't want to kill I wanted to kill some of the traditions, but I wanted the ones that were redeeming and beautiful. And almost all of them, I likened them to, when there's a storm coming, or at least in Florida, a hurricane, you got ice cream and cookies and things like that, but you needed to go get milk and eggs and some stuff that's going to stick to your ribs.
You forgot the cans of Beanie Weenies.
Are you serious?
Oh, you're speaking my dad's language there.
Yeah, I know.
But
I
that's
am your dad's age.
But no, you're
Well,
not.
close.
But it was junk food. All these other. I really hesitate to use the word secular time, but you understand it's the sort of spiritual junk food. And so when I would talk about, well, we're going to have regular Eucharist, regular prayer, on to talk about the difference between the liturgical calendar and chronological, we mark time different. I saw the formation of people that I was walking with. I saw at least in my previous assignment, 10 years worth of walking with people and recognizing
There it is.
we didn't have all the extra things that they thought they needed, at least that they thought they needed, but actually that consistency. And I watched them grow. I watched myself grow.
But there it is. There is the practice of time.
That's right.
And the emergence of virtues, dispositions in people's lives, so that you get to that place where you practice simplicity, you practice joy in these ways of keeping time, of marking days. You practice constancy, fidelity. You realize that some days, as you practice them, require courage. The idea of sticking to your guns and holding fast to the things that you believe. If you do that, right, and you practice, patience emerges. And now we're talking about living the good life.
See, and that's where in one of my favorite parts of the time of Christian time is common time.
Yeah.
And the
Ordinary
reason
time.
is ordinary time.
Yeah.
And the reason is we have seasons in this calendar. We have times of remembering, and we have times of hope, and then we have times of waiting. Right. And in that idea of ordinary time, where we're passing through a time of just, well, where's the big festival? Where's the big moment? It's like that's not the moment we're in, because if you don't have moments in between the remembering and the hoping, then this doesn't truly reflect the life that we live.
Well, and you make the great point. One of the things about the practicing time and ordering time that really matters is there are days of festival. That's what the church calls them. Christmas is a festival day.
Yes.
And Easter is the festival day when our mourning turns into dancing.
That's right.
And the rabbis, I'm sorry, the Orthodox priests who all look like rabbis, but the Orthodox priests sit around and tell jokes about how God has, played mischief on the devil.
Yeah.
And they do that once a year, and everybody can't wait to hear, because they've been thinking about
what
it.
The new thing is that they say.
Right.
Yeah.
But then so much of life with God is ordinary. And if you keep it ordinary, it doesn't let those things become flat.
That's right.
They remain, time remains an active avenue for the presence of the Holy Spirit, even in the ordinariness of life. So that one of the things we practiced that I miss, my daughter's 34. She doesn't live here anymore. I hope she feels guilty right now listening to this. But when she was growing up, we ate together every night, no matter what. We talked about our day. We talked about the goodness of life.
Yes.
And I used to say to her, I want us to get to do this forever.
Yes.
if we lived 10,000 years,
Yes.
I wish we'd be jealous for one more time, one more day to just be ordinary.
But isn't that, hearing you say that, it does. I'm 51, and
Okay, all right.
I'm much younger.
Which
than
camera should I look at
Yeah,
if
I
I
was
want to
gonna
make an
say,
ironic expression?
Where do we make our ironic expressions?
But-
Listening to the 51-year-old.
But you remember the time when you got to the place where you did realize you couldn't make more time, and you realized you wanted to, and
That's good.
and you say, okay, hold on a second.
That's
I've been
right.
running fast because I ran fast real quick, and was given opportunities to,
Yep.
and I think back to those days of being at the table with my kids, and we would eat and the same kind of thing. And I wish I could go back to that. However, I don't know that I'm not saying I missed it then, but I think I don't know that I was aware.
But see, this is now to get
And what are
terribly
we not aware of now?
Well, but this is kind of the nature of time.
That's right.
In philosophy, time is at best a mystery and always a conundrum, because the past is always with us. It doesn't exist, but it's always here. And in Christianity, we can remember our future.
That's right.
And so the future is always with us. And so we live, and philosophers come up with really neat terms like the in-between or the eternal now or the liminal spaces. But we live now, and the
Yes.
past is with us and the future is with us. And so while you feel the difficulty, the pain,
Sure.
right, of the fact that your kids,
They're grown up.
they're grown ups. Well,
Allie's
sort
got-
of grown ups. I don't think anyone who isn't 35 should be allowed to drive a car. Who's with me? I'd like-
Yeah,
Yeah,
I,
yeah, that-
yeah. I just it is interesting though. You watch the looking back is I'm careful. I'm very careful because I do find myself romanticizing some things and recognizing that a lot of the things they really were good, but I'm just I know that. And maybe part of this discussion is what's interesting is recognizing that time, that I can't make more time, but that time in the way that we're talking about it with a creator, my limited mind says it's until this point, and it's just not. It is eternal, and I'm not sure I completely wrap my head around.
Well, time and eternity, this is book 11 of book 12 in the Confessions. Time and eternity are interesting concepts. Eternity is technically a non-temporal concept. Time shall be, you
No
get to
more.
the end,
Yeah.
time shall be no more.
And there will be no sea.
Right. And so Augustine says, so that's the divine. That's the glory, know. But then Augustine, who, can be a bit of a downer, and occasionally a Calvinist. I didn't say those things. But, he says time is evidence of sin. It's evidence of interruption, of our need to change, to be forgiven or perfected. We were sinners. And so, but the place where they come together is literally for him in the Christ who is creator and redeemer and sustainer and the incarnation of all things temporal, no matter how you see it. And this is really interesting.
Yeah, time in that sense is an interruption of eternity.
Yeah.
That you have eternity ever forever going this way, eternity ever forever going this way. And then we have this thing of time that we're passing through. And I don't know that it hit me until pretty late in life, just how uniquely a Christian idea of it is in a world that's bought into evolution, that time has a future. I know it seems silly to say,
Well, no.
but time has a future. Time has a destination. Life. It's Scott Daniels thing that you brought up when we were going through Scott's book about the fifth act. That he posits the thing. You do it. You've told it better.
Well, it's just that there's 6 acts, and we know the 1, 2, 3, 4, and 6 because it's
was
laid
written,
out. It's written out, and we're in 5, and we get to participate in 5. We are in
but
that
Act 5 is
but
lost.
Act 5 is not there.
Yeah.
It's like waiting for Godot eternally
Yeah,
or something.
exactly.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, and I found that particularly interesting in that we are positioned in this act that has not been written. And I
But the final act has. We know where we're headed. We
Right.
know where we're headed.
Right.
so
Yeah.
that should, and that's of course the ethic of how Act 5 is lived out.
But
as
but
a,
if that is true, there are still some things we can know in Acts 5.
Absolutely.
And this, of course, is why we keep feast days for people like John and Charles Wesley, right? So that we
What you
remember.
should have done on that Mother's Day was just talked about Suzanne.
That's right. I should have just gotten up, and if I had had any sense, but being young and brash, and back then my hair was long. But
I remember,
whatever.
Buddy, I
Yeah,
remember.
he remember. We
I
have
remember.
a picture of
I've
me
got
and
the
him at his
picture.
graduation.
Yeah.
But it's interesting in that sense of the now. Christianity, you remember Augustine is so many things. One of the things he is a monk. And the monks are these great reminders of the fact that the virtues order things rightly so that they can be loved well.
They redeem down to the hour.
They redeem down to the hour.
Yeah.
So you begin every morning,
Yes.
with this announcement of creation, maintenance. And then you literally say, and God's glory is before us. And literally in their prayers, they receive
Yes.
time every day.
Yes.
So
Every hour.
lauds every
All
hour.
throughout.
And
every
then
week, and
the
every
third,
month,
and at the
and-
third hour, which is 9:00, they concentrate on the Holy Spirit because the Holy Spirit is given
Yes.
in the third hour.
Yeah.
At 9 a.m. It's really interesting. 12:00, crucifixion, resurrection. This is really interesting. You get to the end of the day to Vespers, like 6:00, and you're supposed to pray a prayer of redemptive thanksgiving for the day, to reflect for a minute and realize what has gone well and what hasn't, but to see the hand of God that laces eternity and time through divine constancy into our lives.
Have you ever done it? Have you gone
Oh,
to
no.
one of the-
I lived with them for a while. Well, I say I lived with them. I went to a Catholic university, and it was just, I just found things I didn't know.
Yeah.
Right? I knew them, but you don't know them until you live them.
But have you been in one of those settings where you practice
yeah.
the day?
Yeah.
through the
I
hours?
did.
Oh,
Did you go
I've-
to the Thomas Merton thing? Did you?
Yeah,
do
I've
No,
done it for years.
Yeah.
I would go to this community that welcomed me when I was a student. And so I was not any way official because I thought,
No.
oh Lord, but they, there was this community. There were 8 communities of monks around this university in St. Louis, and there was a couple guys there who were PhD students, and so they had just the gift of hospitality.
Right.
But I wasn't aware. They said, "Come on, we're going to church. It's Halloween," and you walk in. And it's dark. It's middle of the day, but there's no lights on, and there are people up walking around this.
Did any of them have a
huge
chainsaw?
No, they didn't have a chainsaw, which was scary. But they had gourds, and
That's
they were
way worse.
shaking gourd.
That's way worse.
And they were going ghosts and ghoulies and things that go bump in the night, be gone. And they were shooing out the evil spirits. And then you said, "Come on!" The next day, say,
Apparently,
"Come on
Carmen
back."
did that every time
Yeah.
he recorded in a studio. He
Yeah,
brought
now
in
we
a
have to
guy
sing
who-
the champion, and we
Yeah,
have to put on
it's-
purple suits.
Exactly, he did that.
But then they said, "Come back. We're going the next day, and it's All Saints Day." And you walk in, and there are lilies.
Yeah,
like
and
that are.
it's-
We usually see them on Easter. That there are
And it's illuminated.
It's illuminated,
Right.
and
Yeah.
it's bright white, and they're speaking the names of the dead as though they were there with them. And then they say, "And since we are surrounded."
I didn't have
So,
the,
and I'm just sitting there going, where has this been all my? I was raised by end times people in South Carolina. Okay, I knew what was coming.
I don't think I felt a similar beauty in that. I started at Aquinas Institute of Theology of Theology in St. Louis, and
Oh yeah,
and I learned so much. I was the only Wesleyan there, and similar. No gourd. They didn't do the gourds, but on All Saints
They
Day
have a chainsaw.
they did not have a chainsaw. But on All
face
Saints
mask,
Day,
hockey
We're
face
doing a
mask,
chainsaw. All
hockey
right, next
face
Halloween.
mask.
okay, next, yeah,
We're
yeah,
doing it.
we've
I've got a chainsaw. I'll take the
All right.
chain off to keep it
You
safe.
will probably draw people you have never drawn before.
Yeah.
right here
Well,
at
we
the
already did
Yeah.
that by
Nazarene
having a
Church.
crack bar.
Yeah, right. They're tuning in, man. They're waiting for that next season.
I figure if the crack bar people are listening, the chainsaw's
The
going to
chainsaw is-
play.
yeah, it's
You got to
gonna
trust me.
be
I'm a
big.
marketing guy.
Yeah,
Yeah, he'll
Sort of a
he'll
marketing
sell
guy.
it.
Used to be a marketing guy.
I just feel like it was so. You're right. It's one of those. I didn't know it. you sort of know that there is other, there are other practices that seem to unify us in some ways.
Oh yeah.
And it was all in theory, or I read about it. And, being with nuns and priests, and it was deeply moving and humbling. And their articulation of holy, that day, because I was only there one time for the All Saints Day, that articulation of holy, it really helped me in so many ways. So then it of course feeds into what all pastors use, some sort of lection, right? They're using something, but to order it for a calendar year that is really in so many ways the opposite of what how everyone else is marking time. It was just...
Well, but think about this. It's really sort of neat, right? Because what it does, and there are plenty of different communities, Catholic, Anglican, Lutheran, some local Nazarene churches, they keep time in certain ways. And it's very interesting. Some of them keep time by every fifth Sunday potlucks.
Yep. Right.
And some keep time by, October, first Sunday in October homecomings.
Yeah.
I love those.
Yeah, those are
great. Because
we've got those here where you have to have the fish fry, and we have
these are things we do.
These are things, and it's
very local, and I love that.
And it's in those times that God visits with us.
Yes.
It's just an interesting
it builds
way.
anticipation.
It builds anticipation. It opens us up to things that we otherwise wouldn't do. And it's so different, like you said, from the ways other people keep time. In his great book, Technics and Civilization, this is maybe the 50s, Lewis Mumford, who's, sort of a
Did he have sons?
No, he did not have sons, but he did. He did inspire Neil Postman. If you like Neil Postman, yeah. And Mumford says the fascination with the clock, and the clock is, by the way, developed in monasteries in the Middle Ages.
So they could be on time.
So they could be on time.
Yeah, I saw a
if
thing
you remember
about
the
that.
beginning of The Sound of Music, what's the problem? Maria is not an asset to the Abbey, and it's because she's never on time.
Exactly.
So but he says the fascination with the clock it turned us from time keepers to time servers to those who have been taken hostage.
Absolutely.
And it flattens out.
Well, that's true.
Oh, it is. And it flattens out. But yet, this way of keeping time with God, of remembering homecoming, first Sunday, remembering the people. I preached every Sunday in the Fulton, Kentucky church to 6 people on the back wall, all of whom had been dead long before I got there. And they were the people, and I knew their stories and had never met them.
Yeah,
I knew the story of Sister Willie, who, when they built the local 30-bed hospital, it was right next to her house, and everybody, we can't build it. And Sister Willie, no, she opened up she went and visited the people in the hospital every day, and at night she opened up her windows and she begged God, and she called out names of the people in the hospital, and I got to preach to her. It's really fast. It frees you up to see the world very, very differently.
Yeah,
with hope. With anticipation.
Well, see, again, that's what I was going to say. The hope aspect is, I think that's the part that the chronos, that sort of chronological aspect of marking time. It's just it's a dirge.
Yeah,
it's seemingly just. Here, and that's why
it's
just
Easter again. What did we do last year?
Yeah.
It's Christmas again. What did we do last year?
Or back to when you're in high school, when you're like, just can't wait for the weekend.
Yeah,
ready for the weekend.
Yeah.
I'm just ready for the next. I'm ready to. What's the next thing?
We've talked about how in my journey I decided in about 2023 I was going to buy my time back.
Mm-hmm.
My time was so overwhelmed. I was full-time Trevecca, pretty much full-time with Sony, working all this, and I'd been doing this for 30 years. And I thought, I want my time. Yeah. But here's the thing, what's ironically how it's played out. I thought it would give me time to do whatever I want, but the true blessing of it has been, it has given me the time.
Put you at the mercy of God.
Yep. It has given me the time to order my life so to be able to go every morning, I'm going to do this. Every afternoon, I'm going to do this. Every evening, when you're at the mercy, your time isn't yours. You're at the mercy of other people. You can't order your time. Your time is ordered for you.
I talk about it all the time about that conversation. Yeah, what you know, everybody has that at some point, whether they have a bunch of different jobs or it's just a bunch of different pulled in a bunch of different directions. I talk about that to 20-somethings who are, you know, trying to navigate some new marriages, some with new kids, and and to begin now. Rather than
that's why you have to practice.
And that's why it is a practice. That's why we call this the practice of time. And one of the things I love is we can practice it every hour. We can practice it every day. We can practice
Every
it through
week,
the week. There's a rhythm to the week.
Season,
There's a
every
season.
year.
That time. And yet in the middle of it, I always have this picture of a wheel turning on a line because the wheel is the repetition.
Yeah.
But the moving forward is actually progress towards our future. And so as we are making progress towards God's future, but we're doing it through this repetitious cycle that we visit the same things over and over again.
That's why I
same
use the daily
markers.
office. I read it.
Tells us where we are.
Yeah, because
it
we have
does.
short memories.
And we have
that's
short
good.
memories, and we need to be reminded of all that God has done, not in the great sense of just, you need to be more grateful. No. The actual things that God has done, the actual blessings, the trials,
Because you
sufferings,
can,
all
you
of
can
it.
point to them if you sit still long enough.
That's right.
Yeah, you can.
It takes memory.
And it takes memory. And memory and time are so intertwined.
Yes.
And without
hope.
And hope.
It's right.
But the thing that you said there that I thought was really fascinating is, okay, so these things are happening, and we remember the day that the church was founded, or we remember when John Charles Wesley started the Methodist revival, or but you said we're making progress toward God's eternity.
Yes.
And there is in this the sanctification of time.
That's exactly
and the
what it is.
sanctification of our lives as we move toward that place. When we arrive at the end of all things, at that great future, and we shall find there waiting on us already our past,
Absolutely.
who has acted in every day, in every moment, in every way, who's been steadfast and good and redemptive, even when we did not deserve it. And when we get to the end of all things, waiting on us with nail-scarred hands,
Yes.
saying, welcome home,
Yes.
will be the giver of the good life. And that, my friends, is a time worth practicing.
This is The Good Life is produced by Nathaniel Jackson and is a ministry of Hermitage Church of the Nazarene. Visit hermitagechurch.org for more information about this podcast, as well as our other podcasts, all of which are a way that we're making Christ-like disciples in the nations. Thanks for joining us, and have a blessed day.